Welcome to our podcast. Today I'm sitting down with one of my Uechi-Ryu Karate mentors, Sensei Dan Dovidio. Sensei Dovidio began Uechi-Ryu Karate training in 1975 under the tutelage of Buzz Durkin. He is now a 9th degree black belt and is the owner of Dan Dovidio's Karate in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Mr. Dovidio is a tournament champion who is ranked #1 in the state of New Hampshire and has competed in Okinawa. He is also an expert in the practical usage of pressure points and has a deep knowledge of how they apply to Uechi-Ryu Karate Kata and bunkai. We covered many topics during our conversation, including changing training priorities as you age, developing positive attitude in and outside the dojo, and his time as a competitor. I hope everyone gained some insight from our conversation. Please enjoy Sensei Dan Dovidio. Mr. Dovidio, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
So I think a good jumping off point would be, how did you get started in the martial arts?
Oh, that's a kind of a long story. Back in the day, when Mr. Durkin opened up his school, my brothers went to karate there. So back in 74, 75-ish. And because I was the oldest, my mom would say, hey, bring your brothers to karate. And I had my license, of course. And that's how I was introduced to the karate. I would bring them to karate. Sometimes I'd stay there and watch the class. Sometimes I would, head out, drop them off, and come back, pick them up. And then I sat there a couple times and I'm watching and I'm like, hey, I think I could do this. So it wasn't anything that I was actually looking to do. I just basically came upon it through osmosis, where my brothers were taking it and then eventually they stopped and I just kept doing it. Right. So that's how I got into karate. So it wasn't something that I was actually looking to do. It was something that just fell upon my lap. And I'm glad it did, because it was probably one of the best things that in my life that's happened to me, is sticking with it.
It became a lifelong pursuit for you.
But yes, I mean, it kind of gave me a chance to understand committing to something, which a lot of times these days people don't commit to things. Once something, goes wrong or something, flags, they just kind of just leave it. And, relationships, for example, one little thing happens, they're broken up. They don't kind of work through it and just commit to that relationship. So it's kind of like a lot like that aspect where my karate is a relationship to me. And that commitment is so important to me because it's going to hopefully transcend throughout other parts of my life, like my marriage, my work ethic, and so forth. So that's kind of like how I look at it. It's my grounding. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at my martial arts. Then I didn't look at it that way back then, but now I do look at it as more something that actually has helped me. So it's hard to talk about it, when you first start, because people start for different reasons. Some people start for a physical aspect, some for the mental aspect, some for the emotional aspect. But the thing is that over time you evolve and you understand. It's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of merit to this. And I'm just going to keep going because it is a positive thing in my life. Because in life, you don't really get a lot of positive influences coming at you. It's mostly negative. Right. So coming into the martial arts, it gives me that positivity that I'm looking for, or it balances my lifestyle. So that's kind of like one of the things that I have been pulling from my martial arts.
Right. So, and that's kind of like, you get that positivity not just from the activity, the movements that you're practicing, but the people that you surround yourselves with.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a full package. It's not just me coming training. It's the people that are involved, and they're all looking for the same thing, which is it's a common ground for all of us. We're all looking for that positivity. We're all looking to help each other get better. We're all looking to understand life in its own essence. Where a lot of people don't have that. They don't have that consistency or something that would help them get through this thing we call life. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, I think it has a lot of merit. So yeah.
How has your training evolved over the years?
Well, it's kind of when you're younger, it's a lot different than when you're older. Right. When you're younger, it's like full force, full throttle. And as you get older, you really can't do that as much, or you can't recover that quick because your body isn't as healing as it used to be when you were a younger kid. I remember going to classes like, 2.5 hours, 3 or 4 times a week. We'd be banging the crap out of each other doing conditioning, and we're back the next day doing it all over again. Now, I couldn't do that today, but then again, my mindset in my training is at a different place, So it's kind of like that whole evolution of coming from like a physical, young, hard lionish type atmosphere to more of an older lion, just kind of being the mentor and trying to figure out easier ways to do it or more efficient ways of doing it. And that's really how that curve has gone for me. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the senior guys like Dave Kelly, Tracy Rose, those guys went through the same thing. You know what I mean? So it's a lot different. And today it's a lot different too, because the training isn't as intense as it was back then. But back then, a lot of people weren't doing it. Today it's very common for somebody to get a black belt, because it's just that popular.
Right, and you got to find the balance of people that are there for different reasons. So the people there for the more intense training try to get that in, and the people that aren't there for as intense try to get them something they can work with too.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, everyone's journey's different, right? And like I said, my journey just started by coincidence.
By dropping off a brother?
Yeah, it's not something I actually was looking to do. I just happened to start doing it, and I liked it.
What year did you start training?
I started in 76.
76.
Yeah, so next year is going to be 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Half a century. The only downside of it is you're older.
Yeah, but you're still evolving. Your martial arts is still evolving. Maybe you can touch upon a little bit of some of the cross training you do.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything else, is that the longer you do it, the more invested you are in it, and then you always try to be the student first before you're the teacher, because you get to a certain level, you've done it long enough, you start teaching people. But at the same time, it's like, all right, well, I still need to be a student for me to continue teaching, or to give my students that much more of somebody that's training. So it's a type of thing where you get to that point where you're actually trying to help your students, but you need to continue your own training to keep that going. I've been training with Matt Brown in Uechi-Ryu Kata for about 10 years now. I think I started with him in 14, 15, somewhere around there. And it's definitely catapulted my training, because my objective was, and I've always kind of been interested in pressure points, and I know some people have, through the Wabishi and so forth, but my purpose was that, okay, the human body is constant no matter what style you take. So that's what kind of drew me to the pressure points. And by just understanding that, it gave my own training, my Uechi training, a purpose. Now I know where to strike, how to strike, and so forth. So that was the one thing that just was more of an added value to what I've already been doing. And that was something that, me and Matt just connected. I met him at a seminar. I can't remember when it was. We just started talking, and then I found out he trained in Kyushu Jitsu. And I'm like, hey, you guys, you want to get together and, maybe kibitz a little bit? I'll show you my stuff, you show me yours. And that's how it all started. So, and then, of course, it bloomed into what it is now, and I'm a fifth dan in his style, and, it's worked out. It's complemented what I have, and at the same time, I'm bringing it back here to the dojo and passing it on to everyone else, and my students too. So it definitely has given me more insight to the whole aspect of my martial arts training.
I think that's great. I mean, whether it's through seminars that we've gone to or working with certain people, any of the cross training I've done, which hasn't necessarily been extensive for a long period of time with those individuals, is always just give me a deeper knowledge of my Uechi-Ryu.
Right.
And Uechi-Ryu through and through, but you can add those little bits to it, and it really just gives you a better grasp of the concept you're trying to work on or teach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could have not taken that path and still kind of invested into that portion of it, like I said, the Wabishi, but it would have taken me longer, I think, to get to it. So this kind of put me on the fast track to it, opposed to me just trying to discover it on my own.
Right.
So, that's the whole thing is kibitz with each other. You know, you want to make sure that you're talking to other martial artists and getting more insight on what they do. What do you do for your training? You know, how do you understand the body mechanics and how to maneuver it in a way that is beneficial? So that's one of the things that is good to get yourself out there, expose yourself to other styles, and then in turn they're exposed to you. So that's a good thing, and I know you've done that too. You know, so
As much as I can.
yeah, I know.
I think the Kabuto has been the biggest long-term cross-training I've done.
Right.
Which to me was, especially as a young student, was instrumental and just gave me to loosen up a little bit.
Loosen up, and it gave you a way to extend your training as far as, you know, the weapon is just it's part of your hands. So if you know how to use your hands, then the weapon shouldn't be that much harder. It's just a matter of how you manipulate it. It gives you that longer extension, or gives you that stronger hit, you know. So, but I used to do a lot of weapon training back in the day. Did nunchuck, did the size, the tonfa, bow, Joe, you know, screamer sticks, stuff like that. So, not so much now, because I've been just getting more into just like I said, the pressure points, and just trying to work on teaching my students how to deal with real life situations as opposed to like a sport type atmosphere. So it all depends on, you know, every school's different. You know, this school's known for their sport karate. This school's known for, you know, their grappling. This school is known for, you know, their karate, just more realistic type stuff. So it's all dependent on what you're looking for and what that school's trying to teach you.
Right. I agree. It's hard to be everything at once.
Yeah, you can't. You know, you can dabble a little bit, and guess what? You stick with the stuff you really like. You know.
Sometimes you should stick more of the stuff that you don't like as much as to actually improve upon it.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And that's one of the things I always tell the student. I said, you know what? You're always going to work on the stuff you love to work on, that you're good at. But the stuff you're not good at, that's what you should be focusing on. Because if anything, it's just going to elevate you that much higher by practicing the stuff that you don't like, or that will complement what your overall, you know, training is trying to, you know, or what your objective out of the training is supposed to be.
Was there something when you were a younger student that you didn't like as much that you were pushed to work on more?
Well, at the time when I first started, I mean, pretty much everything was all great. You know what I mean? You know, sometimes when you're sparring and stuff, you get hurt. You know, you don't want to get hurt. But sometimes you have to go through that pain,
right,
to understand and to grow. So without that pain and that disappointment, or you know, those days where your karate isn't up to what you expect it to be, is what makes you stronger. And you have to go through it. It's like a relationship. If you're in a relationship with somebody and somehow the trust is broken, you're kind of heartbroken about the whole thing. But as you get older, you have that feeling, you can understand it, you can sympathize with people that, hey, yeah, I've been through that, and I know what it's like to feel like that. So if anything, it'll help you maybe help somebody else by going through that and really understanding or feeling that pain, you know. And I'm just kind of talking metaphorically, I'm not talking physically. In class it is physical, right? And sometimes it is physical in the class, and that's kind of like where we started this conversation, was the physical aspect of it. But like I said, we were a lot younger back then. We could heal like that, you know. As you get older, it doesn't work that well now, you know, because it takes weeks sometimes to get to a basic injury, not anything like, you know, catastrophic, you know, like, you know, geez, I need a knee replacement, I need a shoulder replacement.
It's funny, the other night, as I was falling asleep, I was like, why does my foot hurt so much? And this has happened to me before, especially when I don't condition as intense as I would like to for a period of time. And I realized, like, oh yeah, I did a really hard kumite with one of my students, and he must have just blocked my foot. And normally that wouldn't bother me, but you know, you take a couple weeks not hitting each other, so I'm like, oh yeah, don't heal as quick as I did in my 20s.
Right. Right, yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, you're a lot younger than me now, so you might be on that cusp where you...
40's right around the corner.
Yeah, I know. So it's kind of like, you know, so when you get an injury, it's like, I'll just shake it off, you know. But as you get older, it's kind of like those minor injuries, they stick with you a little bit longer, you know, which would take you 2 days to heal, it takes you 2 weeks. or 2 months, depending, you know. So
I think with what you're talking about just a moment ago is was important to learn how to fail, and important to learn that it's okay to fail.
Correct. That's the only way to grow.
Right, and it's a hard thing for some people to grasp.
It is.
Until you do it a lot.
It is. So, you know, if you're kind of a narcissistic type person, that'd be a hard pill to swallow. Where somebody that is humble and understands that failure is part of the process of growing, then they accept it and they just are able to deal with it and move on from it. And sometimes that's hard. And I think coming onto the dojo floor and working out with people, you know, similar to you, it gives you that sense of humbleness where you should be humbled. And I always say, if you want to get good at something, make sure you're in the room with people that are always better than you.
Absolutely.
If you're the best one in the room, guess what? You're not learning anything. Right. So you always got to make sure that there's always somebody that is better than you or understands something more than you, and that way there you're going to grow. And that's the only way you're going to get better. So if you think you're the top dog and, you know, it's really, you've basically hit a plateau and you've stopped your training, you've stopped your learning. You know, so you have to make sure that you always leave that path open.
That's how I feel. Every time I walk into class, I'm like, I've been doing this for this long, and I look at the front row, I'm like, oh yeah, those guys have still been doing it for twice as long as I have.
Right.
Nuts.
I actually had one of the students here, you know, they were probably like, I don't know, yawn down, go down at the time. And they said, oh man, how do I get as good as you? I'm like, dude, you got to put the time in. Mm-hmm. You know, this didn't happen to me, you know, overnight. It was the type of thing that I just worked towards it. And I don't consider myself anything great, but at the same time, I'm probably perceived at a level a lot higher than the other students, but I'm really not. It's just that I've traveled that path longer than you have. Right. And that's really what you need to do. Just keep your head down, keep always trying to learn, and just over time, you'll get there. And a lot of people don't have that, especially in the you know, Americans. Not that I'm American, and I'm not looking at it from a non-American aspect. Is that we always want things today. We want it quick, done. Okay, on to the next thing. But we have to step back and we have to say, okay, for me to get really good at something, I need to spend the time and go through the process like everyone else.
So that kind of leads into one of the things I really like to dive into whenever I'm talking to someone like this is, what to you is the definition of Budo?
The definition of Budo. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the honor of how you look at yourself and how you treat other people. It's kind of like, you know, everybody's way is different. So it's hard to put a perspective on it for everyone. Like I said, for me, it was just more of, this is my constant, this is my grounding. So whenever anything negative comes at me, I try to use this as a way to get grounded and approach things logically and rationally to make sure that whatever my choices are, they are the best choice for me and whoever else is around me, depending on the situation. So that way, like I said, it's different for everyone. And it changes over time. The way I looked at it back when I first started is a lot different than the way I look at it today. Because I'm growing through it, you know. Back then I was a baby son, you know. Now I'm a senior son, you know, so it's the evolution has definitely changed over time on what the way was, you know. So it's really hard to say, you know, and talk to me tomorrow, might be something different, you know.
No, I get that. I fully get that.
Yeah.
Depending on even what aspect of the training I'm thinking about, my opinion changes. Right. Am I talking about how I live my life every day in and outside the dojo, or am I talking about the fighting part of it? And that could change my perspective on moment to moment on what I'm trying to And then how do you meld the two?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's a lot of intertwining of different things, and it changes. Like you said, it could be week to week, year to year, month, decade to decade. So it's a type of thing where it's an evolving type thing. It's not something that's constant or cut and dry. Right. So that's the good thing about it, because that means growth. That you constantly trying to understand yourself. And as you go through life, you don't really understand everything that goes on. You don't know everything. The longer you live, the less you feel you know. You know what I mean? Because you start learning more. It's like, crap, I didn't know that, It's just, that's something like totally different, and it's going to take me another lifetime to figure out, So it's
Part of the fun.
It's the evolution of it, so.
You competed when you were younger, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I competed a lot.
What did that bring into your training?
Well, when I first started competing, I was a brown belt. There wasn't a lot of tournaments back then. I remember there was one yearly one that we used to do. Brandeis, Richie Baptista, used to run the tournament every year. And it was an open tournament. It wasn't just a Uechi tournament. But because he was Uechi, a lot of Uechi people supported it. And it's totally different than the way it is today. Back then, no pads, no helmets. I don't know if cup and mouthpiece were mandatory. Some people just didn't like to wear them.
People's poor
But
knuckles.
I know. So it was a type of thing where it was just totally, it was brutal, a lot brutal than it is today, where everything is all safety, oriented, and, chest protectors, headgear, hands, feet, and all that stuff. And they got some bloody bats going, with some of the fights and stuff, And I remember fighting Billy Blanks as a brown belt. You know what I mean? And he's a phenomenal martial artist, But it's more the sport. It introduced me to that sport aspect of it. And because it's Uechi, we're not really training to be a sport fighter. So it's really tough, because I remember trying to sweep legs and stuff like that. I remember exactly. I got Billy once with the leg kick, a sweep, and he was just like, oh man, I got disqualified because I did it, but I was just doing what I know. It wasn't anything that I didn't know. And of course, these guys, they do these flying kicks and all this other stuff, and I'm not trained to do that type of stuff. So I was just going in with what I know, just get in close and hit hard. That's all. I mean, that's how typically my mentality. But over time, I was able to kind of adapt a little bit and know that there is a segregation between the two, where on the dojo floor I'm training for real life, but then also I'm doing the sport part of it. So my training had changed just a little bit to kind of coincide with the rulings of that particular organization or that tournament, the tournament rules and stuff. So it kind of gave me more insight into martial arts, because now I'm exposed to all these different styles that I've never seen before. So now it's like, I'm like, oh, I like that move. Maybe I should start practicing that move. And I'm like, oh, I like what that guy did. I go over and I start talking to him like, hey, what would you suggest me to do to kind of, develop that type of technique, So getting back to just like, being involved with other martial artists actually makes you grow.
For sure.
And that's kind of like how I was looking at the tournaments. And then, of course, I ran my own tournament for 5 years. So doing that. But the promoter's world's a lot different than a competitor's world.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, because usually when you're promoting, you're not really competing. You can compete, but it just, you're at a different level. It's kind of like student to sensei.
Yeah, it's a little
you know what I mean?
It's a little questionable.
You've kind of made it up to that next level. And, back when I was like I think it was early 90s, I was ranked like #1 in New Hampshire for a couple of years for sparring, which was pretty cool. But I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. But to me, it was like it gave me a sense of accomplishment, So it was a good experience for me. If anybody's looking to get into that sport karate, it's a total different world, especially coming from the Uechi dojo floor,
right?
So it's something that you got to you got to adjust.
Right. That's why when we do sparring at my dojo, it's usually not the point stuff. We're just
Right.
kind of messing around and just keeping it going and flowing and
Right.
grappling a little bit if we can and just trying to hit each other.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just trying to just refine yourself for that timing, distance, and how to read people and, you know, how to mix it up just so you can be efficient with it in case you have to do it in real life, you know. Because I remember there was this guy, I remember seeing a story, there was two MMA fighters, and I guess they were pretty well known, and they happened to be at a store, and they said something or something transpired between them and a couple of girls that were in the store. Well, come to find out their boyfriends were outside, and they wound up getting in a big fight with like 3 or 4 of them beat the 2 MMA fighters up. I mean, one of them hurt really bad, like almost to the point where they almost died. And I'm kind of looking at that, and I'm like, well, okay, those people that train in this controlled environment in a cage with the judge, head ref, with rules and everything like that, they may be good in that element, but in a real life situation, that's totally different. And that's why they got hurt bad, because, you know, they had 3 or 4 people with no rules.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So just because you're training and doing this, you got to make sure that, you know, the reality is totally different from the dojo floor or the cage or whatever you want to look at. So, you know, that's one of the things that I always keep in the back of my mind is, you know, I got to be prepared for a real life situation, because that's what we're all here for. We hope it never happens, but if it does, hopefully we're proficient enough that we'll be able to defend ourselves and to save ourselves from being, you know, injured or if not killed. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at the training now. But yeah, it's just when I look at my martial arts training, I look at it for realistic things, not competitive. I'm not trying to compete. The only competition should be you against yourself. That's the competition. So you always want to beat yourself, I guess. No. Well,
Mentally.
right. I meant, yeah, mentally you want to make yourself better.
Right. You want to be the best version of yourself.
Right, right. And that's where the failure comes in.
Right.
You have to fail to progress.
Correct.
So we just made a full circle, didn't we?
Man, good job.
Wow.
So your family trains or has trained at certain points, correct?
Yes. My wife started with me probably 7 years after we met.
Okay.
She trained with Mr. Durkin. She got a black belt with Mr. Durkin. And then I had opened up my school, and then she got her 2nd, 3rd, and 4th down with me. My son's trained, he's got his son down with me. And my daughter never trained at all.
Okay.
Now, mind you, in the household,
She can still hit hard?
well, it's not so much she hits hard. It's just that between me being the 9th, my son being the 3rd, and my wife being the 4th, all of us are afraid of my daughter, who has never touched karate yet ever. I mean, I think she took it once when she was like this tall, but she didn't really want it. She wanted to dance. She's dancing all around. But, you know, what she makes up, you know, for technique is her attitude. So that's, I think, more what we're scared of. It's her attitude, not so much her.
She's got that martial spirit.
Right. But physically, we know, you know, we got it on her, but yeah, it's just, she psychs us out by, you know, her attitude. But yeah, that's kind of like a running joke in the family. You know what I mean?
What did it mean to you to have your wife and son training with you?
You know, I think my wife appreciated it, you know, as far as what I was doing. And she actually helped me with the school, and she was the program director, and she taught. I mean, she loves teaching the kids. And have my son doing it, you know, especially when he's going through middle school. That's kind of like a weird transition for boys, is that middle school years. And I think that helped him as far as his confidence and just trying to become the man he is today, you know. So I you know, and I'm hoping, like the masters used to do, it was a family thing you pass on from generation to generation. So he has a sandan, so he knows the whole system. And he still trains here and there, but I'm hoping if he has kids that he'll pass it on, like the way it was originally done.
Right.
You know, so that's, and you know, it means a lot to me too, because it's my passion, and they're following the journey with me, and kind of develop their passion for it too, So it's nice to have them doing it,
And it's fun when you get to hit your family.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like me and my wife do Dan Kumite after dinner or something, It's just, some it all depends. Sometimes we'll mess around with each other, It's like, hey, can I try this thing on you? Because I'm always constantly thinking of stuff, and I'm like, hey, throw a right punch at me, But we don't get crazy, The first thing
Right.
she always says is, don't hurt me.
While she hits you really hard.
She could.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't tell her, like, hit me hard. It's just more of just, okay, throw a slow punch at me so I can slowly go through this technique that I want to try, So.
You're a musician.
I am.
Has there been any correlation between how you practice your music and your martial arts? Have they ever been connected with each other?
Well, maybe just a discipline or just trying to practice. I'm a better martial artist than I am a musician. So, and I think martial arts is less of a hobby than my musical interest. Because I try to play multiple instruments. I can play drums, play guitar. Of course, if you play guitar, you can probably play bass, play harmonica. So music just is kind of a thing that's good for your soul, where it moves you, it brings you up, it can bring you down, So music is very, for me, it's very good for my psyche, because it's all the message that music gives you, or what I create. And that's the thing where I'm at now, where I'm actually creating music, and it could be just improv, an improv type thing. But it's just giving me a way to kind of maneuver around things. It's almost like in martial arts. You're trying to learn something, and you're not quite getting it, but you kind of approach it from a different angle, and you finally get it. So it's a type of thing where it's like anything else. It's everything's stacked on each other. Right. And then it just overall the plateaus get higher and higher. So and that's kind of like how I use the music, and I do kind of related to martial arts too. Like when I'm trying to explain to somebody about doing the kata, I tell them, I says, listen, it says, like music, the most important part of the music is the no sound, the pause in between each sound, because that's what makes the music. If you just kind of just keep playing the music, it's just noise. Right. There's really no distinction and no feeling behind it. So it's that those pause moments are just as important as the actual note. Mm-hmm. So I tell the students about the kata. I says that pause you do in between your movements is just as important as the movement, because you remember everything that we do is a bunch of movements put together. Because in a real life situation, you may only use one technique. So in a kata, how many techniques are in it? Like say Kanchiwa. Yeah. Double
10,
digits,
10,
right?
15,
at least 10, yeah. So, the pause in between each one, because when you explode, boom, you stop, because it's done. And then you go on to the next move. So it's just micro movements combined together, and we call it a kata, right? So that's kind of like the same way music is. You're playing your riff or whatever it is, but that pause in between is what really brings out the sound or brings out your technique. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like how I equate the music to my martial arts. And like I said, believe me, I'm no anybody that's great at playing guitar or whatnot. But you know what? I'll put myself out there. I'll play, and it doesn't matter, because it's just me being organic. Right. And that's what karate is. It's an organic thing. You just go out and you do it. Every kata is different. Every time you do a kata, even though it's the same kata, it's different. Because there's a lot of factors in there. It's your mind, body, spirit, how you feeling today. Physically I'm feeling high, but emotionally maybe not so high. You know what I mean? Kind of feeling a little low, and so that's kind of like that has a lot to do with it. And that's why music is like that. It's a feeling. It's not so much a doing. It's just a feeling that you get when you're doing or bending those notes or playing that riff and so forth. So it's kind of like they have a lot of similarities. Sure. It's just your approach is different, or the outcome's different. So,
I couldn't agree more. Any final thoughts you might have for anyone listening?
I think if you're interested in taking martial arts, it's a great way to work your whole lifestyle, physically, mentally, emotionally. Because a lot of times people go to the gym, it's just a physical thing. Some people go to a therapist because it's a mental thing, you know. And as far as your emotions, you know, it all depends on how you are, how strong your emotion is. Because sometimes people can't control themselves. So what this does for you, it kind of gives you a sense of putting everything in one package, and it kind of gives you an overall boost in your lifestyle. So, like they always say, you know, bring your karate with you. And I know pretty much everyone does. So when I'm out and about, I'm not thinking about the kata. I'm just thinking about how can I treat people, and how are people treating me. So I try to give what I want. So if I'm hoping it's reciprocal, where if I am nice to somebody, I'm hoping that they're nice back to me. If I'm rude to somebody, I should expect to be rude back, you know what I mean, from them. So there's just little things like that through life that karate does help you with that. The one thing that I do want to stress is that a lot of people, as they get older, especially when they get older, they feel like because they are older that they're not capable of physically doing something. So at the base minimum, I always say, if you do anything, at least do 3 20-minute walks a week. At least that's a base to start with. Because I see so many people, they just sit, they get stagnant, and you know what happens when you get stagnant? You start losing everything. You know, things pop up, you start getting cancer and all this other stuff. So a moving body is a healthy body. So if anything to get across to anybody is keep moving, no matter what it is. It doesn't even have to be martial arts. Just do something, you know, because I do a lot of cross training too. I do Tibetan rites pretty much at least 5 days a week. And it's basically just 5 yoga positions, you do them 21 times, but it gets my body moving. It gets me stretched out, so that way there, you know, if I'm sitting down at my desk doing my computer work, I can get up and go do something for 5-10 minutes, you know, like I'll go do some bicep curls, or I'll get on the treadmill, or whatever. You know, I'll just go out for a walk. So I do a lot of that type of cross training. And I try to mix it up too. I don't try to do the same thing over and over, because your body will get used to it. So what I'll do is I'll, like, you know, work maybe upper body, and then I'll do lower body. You know what I mean? And try to mix it up throughout the week we're talking about, not just like, you know, 1 week biceps and 1 week, you know what I mean? But I try to mix it up and try to just kind of like put it in the bag, mix it up. All right, what am I going to do today? You know what I mean? But I think if anything, if I was to give anybody advice, that would be the advice that I would give them. Stay moving. A moving body will fight off any type of infection that you can think of. But if you stay stagnant and stay steady, it's going to get you. It's going to catch up to you. So, you know, I didn't get to this age, you know, looking this way by not doing that. Right. You know, because I'd be a totally different person if I didn't take martial arts. You know what I mean? I'd be lucky if I could get out of this chair if I hadn't taken martial arts, you know? So if anything, that's what I would say. Just stay moving, stay physical, especially when you get older. And when you're young, you're usually doing something anyway. You know, I'm hoping. You know, I don't want these kids to be sitting here on the video game all day and playing, because it's not good for you.
It would have been me without the martial arts, so.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? I mean, it's funny, because when I did the video game thing, it was Nintendo 64 when they first come out, the Mario Brothers. Yeah. I put the thing in there, I beat the thing like 3 times, I'm like, okay, I'm good, and I sold it, and that was the last time I did a video game. I mean, of course I played around here and there, you know, because my son's got the Xboxes and stuff, and I'll jump on and, you know, just play it for a little bit, but it wasn't something that consumed my life. I just chose to do it for entertainment. You know, it wasn't anything, but I was like that when that Nintendo first came out, you know what I mean? I was just like, you know what I mean? But then I just got rid of it. I'm like, okay, all right, I could see the attraction, but at the same time, I could see how much it could waste of your life. Right. You know, so that's why I kind of just sold it. I wish I had it now. It'd be worth a lot of money.
We'll find you one.
Huh?
We'll find you one.
No, I don't need one. I'm just kidding. You know, it's like that old stuff, you know, you just get rid of it. And then next thing you know, they're worth like 30,000, you know. So anyway, so what do you think?
That was great.
Was it good?
Thank you, Mr. Dovidio.
Too much rambling?
Not at all.
All right, good. I'm glad I was able to help you.